Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Engel. I am a digital engineer with the Nevada Department of Education in the Digital Learning Collaborative. And in this video today, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of digital tools that you can use for something that I call a mindset reset. We're going to talk about some different collaborative boards today. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So like I said, hi, my name is Lauren Engel. I am a high school math teacher at Valley High School in Clark County School District, but I'm also a digital engineer with the Digital Learning Collaborative with the Nevada Department of Education. If you're interested in reaching out to me, if you have questions or anything after you watch this video, there's my email address right there. So it's lengel.nvdlc@gmail.com. All right. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about two different tools that I use in my classroom fairly often. One is Google Jamboard and the other is Padlet. They have very similar functions and they do very similar things. They're both collaborative boards, very similar to a parking lot that you may have in your physical classroom, or if you ever have students go around the room with sticky notes, doing gallery walks, things like that. Right? Very, very similar to that. But I wanted to show you a couple of things that and lessons that I use them for to help with student mindset and growth mindset and being a goal-oriented student. I will preface this by saying that I designed all of these lessons for high school students, right? But they can be adapted for middle school students, for elementary school students. You'll just have to work with the digital tools a little bit differently. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is a Jamboard that I typically do in the beginning of the school year to create classroom norms with my students. There's a lot of reasons that I do this, right? But the biggest is to get students to participate in creating classroom rules so that they have some buy-in, right? And then I can always reference back to them and say, hey, this is something that you agreed to at the beginning of the year, very similar to a classroom contract, but Jamboard makes it really interactive and fun and interesting for the kids. So I'm going to switch over here on the screen. So this is my classroom norms Jamboard. So at the beginning of the school year, I have these directions that I write for the kids, and I ask them to write what I call classroom community agreement that is important to them. What I like about Jamboard is that they can add sticky notes, obviously, which is what you see on the screen here. There's lots of very colorful things. These are all like sticky notes that your kids would, write on and add to your whiteboard, or a big sticky note, a big Post-it that you put on the wall, or on one of those big Post-its that you can write on. But this is a digital version. So I like, one, that they can add sticky notes and type very easily, but I also like that they can do things like this where they can add images. So some kids in my fifth period decided to add images here. And they can also add other shapes and text boxes and things like that. They can click the pen to write on the screen. Most of mine, however, choose to use the sticky note option. One thing that I will advise that you do whenever you're dealing with a Jamboard is to write your directions on a document and insert it as an image so that way it can't be accidentally changed. In Jamboard, you don't have the option to limit or restrict what users can do if they have editing access. So very similar to a Google Doc or a Google Slide. Right? Anyone who has editing access can change anything on the screen. So you do have to be careful when you're doing this and make sure the kids understand the expectations. So that's why I write the directions on another document and then I insert it as an image, and I have that image saved on my computer so that way, just in case somebody deletes it by accident, that I can very quickly add it back in. Another thing that this is useful for is I can have the students like other people's ideas. So you can add a little emoji. Mine's a text emoji that they can copy and paste and move onto other students' ideas to say, yeah, I really like that idea, or I second that idea. So I'll show you another one that another one of my class periods made. This was a smaller class of more juniors and seniors that know each other a little bit better. So they obviously wrote a little bit more and were more excited about saying, yeah, I really like that idea. So a lot of them went and added stars and likes to different classmates' ideas. So what's great about this, other than the fact that you can do something that you would do in your physical classroom digitally, is that you can save it, obviously, and the kids and you can reference it at any time, put it in your Google Classroom or your Canvas page as a reminder on your homepage of the class expectations. But what I also like about this is that you can modify it to have the kids provide you with their names when they add an idea versus not adding their names. So obviously you can set your directions to have the kids add their name or their student number, if you would prefer to have some anonymity, to the sticky note that they type in. For me, I chose to give the kids anonymity when they were writing this so that way they wouldn't feel obligated to put a claim to something maybe that they didn't want to put a claim to. High schoolers can be a little bit fickle, so sometimes they'll want to put something out in the world that they may think would be unpopular, so they don't want to put their name directly attached to it. If you are an elementary school student or elementary school teacher, you could, if you were going to do something like this on a Jamboard, which is why I have a blank one right here, you could add sticky notes with each student's name. Wait, so there's one. Here's number 2. I'll change the color of that one. Let's make it blue. Why not? Right, and you can move them to different places on the screen, and then the kids can find the sticky note with their name on it, double click on it, and then they can delete their name, right? Or click, enter underneath their name and type what they want their classroom norm or rule to be, right? So that would be a way that you could do this. You could do this and have the kids put a name to whatever it is that they wrote. So that's Jamboard. That's a great way to use Jamboard. Jamboard is a really wonderful, useful tool that you can use to make mind maps and have the kids brainstorm, do lots of different things. But this is one way that I used it for not necessarily a mindset reset, but creating a classroom culture and creating a mindset amongst my students that everyone should use their resources and be respectful and try not to procrastinate and, speak up when they need something. So you can do this, though, throughout the year. If you didn't do this at the beginning of your year or at the beginning of your semester, you can do these things at any time and say, hey, we need to do a mindset reset. So let's all come together and think of some things that we want to have change in our class. Give me some ideas. What are some things that are working for you? What are some things that are not working for you? What are you doing well? What are you not doing well? And how can I, as your teacher, support you in growing into a more complete version of yourself? So that's Jamboard. And then the other part of this that I want to show you is a full goal setting lesson that I do with my kids at the start of the second semester. Again, this is the best example that I have in my own classroom of a mindset reset. And it relies heavily on a collaborative board. And in this lesson, I use Padlet. So I will show you why the features of Padlet really help and assist with this lesson. But I do want to walk you through what the actual lesson is. And then if you would like to do a lesson like this with your students, there'll be some resources for you at the end that you can make copies and have the students do something similar to this in your own classroom. So the goal of this lesson is for me to help the students reset their minds, shift mindsets, and really the most important part of this lesson is to show the kids that they're not alone. So I'm showing you on the screen exactly what I would show to my students. So I always start lessons like this, and I actually start every week with a motivational quote. It's Motivation Monday. So I always start out with this one. When we get to the second semester, develop a passion for learning. And if you do, you will never cease to grow. Just to kind of put them in the right mindset that today we're going to talk about, growth, and we're going to talk about being passionate about something and putting work into something that you care about. Right? So at the end of every semester, I always have my students write me a little reflection about what worked well for them, what didn't work well for them, what they accomplished, what they struggled with. And I also have them write some advice to themselves, to their future selves, about how to avoid the issues and the struggles that they faced in the previous semester. Right? And after I kind of talk them through that portion of it, we jump into the first part of the lesson, which deals with our collaborative board, right? So I'm going to escape this here, and I'll show you what this Padlet looks like. So I, as their teacher, after going through their common issues in all of their reflections, I listed the most common ones in what I call our Common Struggles Padlet. So this is the Common Struggles Padlet. At the top, it has a list of all of these really common issues that my students had, right, listed in an individual column. So what I have the students do with this is I have them pick one, right, at least one, and write a post in that column about why that particular thing was a struggle for them, what they could do to help minimize or eliminate the problem for themselves this semester, and then of the things that they listed, what do they actually actively have control over? What do they have the active ability to change? So, for example, there's very little that I, as their teacher, can do about their wacky sleep schedule, right? That's something that they have to take ownership of and have to attempt to rearrange some things in their lives to be able to change, right? But this idea here of having too many assignments or having lots of assignments due the same day, right? That is not necessarily something that is in their locus of control, right? So the great thing about this is it has them think about and separate what they actually can do to impact their lives and try to eliminate some of the issues that they had previously held versus the things that maybe they don't have control over, other than reaching out to the people that do have control over that thing. So, and I keep going back to this example here of having too many assignments or lots of assignments due the same day. They don't have the ability to set that, right? I do as their teacher, but they do have the ability to reach out to all of their teachers and say, hey, I don't know if you all know this or you're communicating with each other on this, but we have a lot of assignments that are due on the same day. And I feel like I can't keep track. And a lot of my peers are saying that they feel like they can't keep track and keep up either. So that's a great way for them to take control over their own lives and over their own struggles. Another thing that I like about Padlet is that I have the ability as the teacher to set how they interact with this. So if I click on settings here, right, I can change how I want them to react to things. So for this, I wanted them to be able to like and comment on posts. But I could also give them the ability to give a post 1 to 5 stars or vote up or down for their favorites, right? For this particular activity, I wanted them to have the likes and the comments because I wanted them to see that lots of other students were struggling with the same thing that they were struggling with, and that they were not alone, and that they could reach out to other students, and they have a commonality with those other students in those things that they are feeling. I think especially with distance learning, it can be very isolating for students, and they feel sometimes that they don't have anyone to talk to, or that nobody really can relate. Another thing that I enjoy about Padlet that I have the ability to affect is this thing called attribution right here, right? Which is to display author name above each post. So when you set a Padlet, you can have the students sign in with their Google accounts, but you can turn on and off whether or not their names show up when they post something, right? So for this activity, I chose to have it off because I had them talk about some things. Some of them talked about some things that that they struggled with, but maybe they didn't want to put their name on, like managing some of their anxiety, right? That's a very personal issue and maybe not something that they would want all of their classmates to know that they wrote. But I, as the teacher, have the ability to turn this on, the attribution on, afterwards, so that if there's a student I need to reach out to based on something that they wrote, that I will know who wrote that post. So that's important for me as a teacher when, especially dealing with things like mental health and anxiety and depression and things like that in our kids, right? So the goal of this, and why I like this as a collaborative board, is I really wanted them to see how many people were struggling with the same things that they were struggling with, so that they would have that mindset reset, to know that they were not alone in what they were feeling. Right? So after I have my students do this, right, this is the first part of this lesson, right? Then I just quickly talk about some things that I did or that I changed that were in my locus of control to try to help them with these things that they were struggling with. You can see them all on the screen right now. These are things that I changed specifically for my geometry students, my high school geometry students. If you're interested in any of these things, please feel free to reach out. Like if you want to know what project tutors are, or my musical lunch hour that I do, please feel free to reach out and I can kind of tell you what those things are. And then I always go back to my classroom mantra, which, because I'm a Disney nerd, comes from a Disney movie. So this is the kind of summary of our mindset reset that I always remind them, hey, these are the 2 things that I ask of you in my classroom. And I list out some things underneath to remind them of, and kind of keep them in that growth mindset, and within their mindset reset, that they shouldn't be afraid to try, that they should speak up if they don't understand something, that they should be kind to themselves by creating a schedule and trying not to procrastinate, and to ask for help when they need it. Right? So the assignment that goes with this lesson is a goal setting assignment, which I have instructions for on the screen right here, but I'm going to show you what the actual document looks like, which, like I said, there is a link to at the end of this that you can make a copy of this if you want to do an activity similar to this with your students. So after going through all of their reflections, and after putting the common problems that they encountered in that Padlet that you saw, I found some resources for my kids online that gave them tips and tricks to help them with those issues that they struggled with, and then I had them do a couple of questions to reflect on what they read and what they learned, and how they'll use it to set them up for success. Right. So the collaborative board part of this lesson helps them kind of analyze what was wrong, and then this part, which is not really a collaborative board because it's something that's introduced or submitted rather to me that I grade. But it has them actually put into action some things that can actively help them with the issues that they were struggling with, right? So to really cement that mindset reset and say, I am going to do these things to make this better for myself. I also collect advice from past students, and I put it in this very fancy big document that I have the students go through and read and do a very similar thing, right? What stood out to them? So this is a version of a collaborative board, or rather, it's more a collection of thoughts from students. So I pull things from past collaborative boards and save them in this document. But what's good about this for the kids is that, again, it helps with this idea that they are not alone in the way that they are feeling and thinking, and that these things are coming straight from previous students. It's in their language, in their jargon. Sometimes things, as they would say, they hit different when it's said by a student rather than a teacher, right? And then the last part of this, I think, is the most important, which is the setting goals part. So I give them a link to some SMART goals if they don't know how to set really good goals that they can go through and read. And then they have to set an academic and a personal goal and list out a couple of steps that they'll take to get there. Their academic goal doesn't necessarily have to be for my class because I teach high school and the kids have lots of classes, right? But it could be for another class or just for school in general. I get a lot of, I would really like to achieve all A's and B's this semester, or I would like to improve my GPA by this many GPA points or something like that. Right. And then I tell them that their personal goal, in an attempt to help them achieve some balance, right? That's another mindset reset, that their personal goal should have nothing to do with school at all, right? And then at the very bottom, I always write my goals and my wishes for them so that they know that I am invested in them, and that they should be invested in themselves and in their goals and in their learning. Right? So that is essentially it. So those are my couple ways that I use collaborative boards in order to achieve these mindset resets. And what's great about both of these tools, both the Jamboard and the Padlet, is that there are lots of different options for how you can interact with them. If, for example, in the Padlet, you don't want the kids to interact with something in that column format, there's just a free-flowing, almost like a corkboard, more similar to the Jamboard format. There's a mind map format. There's lots of different orientations that you can use when you use Padlet. And the reason I bring that up is because Padlet is a tool that you can use whether you are a Google user or not, right? Obviously, Jamboard is a Google for Education tool. So if your district does not use Google for Education, you may not have access to Jamboard, but Padlet is something that you can sign up for. It's free, right? You get a couple free Padlets that you can continue reusing. You can download responses and then reuse, so you don't have to upgrade to the paid version. But anyone can use that regardless of the district that they're in. Right. So like I said at the beginning, and I've kind of said throughout the video, that there would be some resources for you at the end. Once again, this is my email address. So my name is Lauren Engel, and that's my email address, lengel.nvdlc@gmail.com. And on the NVDLC website, where you've probably found this video, there should be a link to both these slides and the Google document that I showed you that has the student assignment for goal setting. But you can also click within this presentation in order to access or make a copy of that document. Right? So I hope that this was helpful for you and that you learned a little something about how you can use collaborative boards in order to achieve a mindset reset with your students. As I said, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.